Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Ultimate Spider-Man issue 9 by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Cicchetto. Earth 6160 continues to itch towards the return of the Maker as we pick up with Ben and Jonah, who are out celebrating the fact that the paper is doing quite well. The duo are met by MJ, who's their publicist, and who learns while the paper is a success, the men don't really like the success it's bringing them since all they are doing is reporting on Spider-Man and his antics. I really find it hilarious that the big difference here between JJ and 616JJ is that he doesn't want pictures of Spider-Man. He and Ben want to actually report on the news and not worry about sensationalist articles. MJ has to explain to the men how these stories are actually fueling the site and are kind of like their bread and butter, which will allow them to do bigger stories, citing how in 6 months they'll actually be bigger than the Daily Bugle. And I really like how Hickman puts it here, saying that these stories are like the icing on the cake. You know, all these Spider-Man stories that drive clicks to their website are just like the sweet icing on the cake. And the people who actually subscribe to them will actually want the cake more after this, which is the big stories they are running on the people who are actually running the city and the world. And if they continue the Spider-Man stories, they will get a carte blanche on these types of stories and will be able to run whatever they want and everyone will see it. Now, this could have been a story where MJ was kind of pushing back against Ben and JJ's wishes, unknowingly protecting the higher-ups because she thinks they should focus on getting, the hits and the clicks and the views, which, let's face it, this day and age is mostly what news is. It's all, clickbaity articles, rage bait, culture war bullshit. And I could see them going down that route, but I like that they didn't. They swayed away from what was the very obvious story beat. Peter and Harry, meanwhile, will return to their base of operations after another successful mission busting crime across the city. As they return, Otto reveals to the heroes that he's developed devices that will help cut the suits off from Stark's network, effectively freeing them from being shut down whenever Iron Lad deems fit. Installs one into Harry's suit, which will constantly change the suit's firmware and hide it, kind of like when, you've pirated a video game and you've got to crack it to get rid of the DRM. I quite like that, and I like the simplicity of it. Peter, however, has another cool conversation with his suit, which heavily implies that it knows Otto wants to try and keep it if Peter decides to go ahead and cut it off from the network. And it's right. Otto does heavily imply that he wishes to keep the suit there to study and learn a little bit more about, which the suit doesn't want to do at all, and manages to convince Peter to leave it behind at home to act as a home protector. And Tony already knows where he lives, so then it's a non-issue. To solve the problem though for Peter's suit, Otto doesn't know how to deal with the hyper-advanced suit directly, so instead he builds Peter another suit, which is just the Iron Spider suit and a red version of Harry's suit. It's all tricked out with weapons and guns and missiles and things Spider-Man generally does not want, which is why Peter flat out refuses to use it thanks to it being a walking arsenal of weaponry. Otto eventually reveals he might have a far more simpler solution and gets to work as Ben and JJ continue digging into the Stark Stain story they're running, getting some more files from Robbie Robertson slipped to them regarding financials for the company, which will no doubt put them in odds with Harry and the people who are actually bankrolling them, being that Gwen and Harry are secretly their benefactors. Peter and Harry meanwhile get back to work, and Peter wears his new suit, which is just a spandex suit without all of the bells and whistles, basically a classic Spider-Man costume. And I like that this is a cool nonchalant way to move away from the hyper-advanced suit to a more traditional hero costume, and even ups the stakes, being that the suit can't protect Peter, it's just, a material. So I guess he's got to also be a bit more careful now with who he fights and how he fights. And I guess this also sets up the other suit to become the symbiote to someone else, or at least build towards that story, because that's absolutely where they're going with the story of the suit being the symbiote. And I imagine the suit will get mad at Peter is out on his own and try to quote unquote help him and possess someone else to go and help him. Harry and Peter's relationship is also explored more here, as Harry invites Peter and his family to go vacationing with him and Gwen over Christmas. But Peter has to remind him that it's Christmas and Christmas is for family, and he's got a fair bit of family that he needs to see and be with at that time. And it really just shows how different different these men are and how different their lives are and how different they grew up as, where Harry had nothing but, his father and mother, and, it was all very sterile because, they're rich people. They don't really care for each other. Whereas Peter has all of the family and everything around him, and Harry doesn't really understand that. And this also gives us a great look into Gwen, as Harry reveals that Gwen has already made plans to go up to the Hamptons, which is why he invited Peter and his family. You can't tell Gwen no. She won't accept no as an answer, so he's effectively already spoken for the holidays. And I quite like this idea that Gwen is a bit more of the controlling one in the relationship. And even in the business, we've seen hinted at the past where she's a bit more business savvy than Harry and is kind of using him and in a way manipulating him and his choices to get what she wants. It's a far cry from the character who was always used as the damsel in distress before her death. The conversation is interrupted when Peter's spider sense kicks in, and I like that he still doesn't really know what it is, and he's still trying to figure out this feeling he gets every now and then when trouble happens, so he hasn't actually called it the spider sense properly yet. And they are attacked by the Black Cat, who locks up Harry's suit with a shock blast and takes on Spider-Man alone. As I assumed, Peter gets injured thanks to the suit being spandex, getting slashed by Black Cat's whips, so he realizes pretty quickly, I might add, that he can't just be his usual self in this. He has to actually kind of take this a little bit more seriously. He still cracks the odd joke and everything, but he has to take this villain quite seriously now. Black Cat proves quite a match for Spider-Man, easily taking down the hero by pulling a water tower down on him and telling him that Kingpin sent him and has called together all of his captains from all over New York to take down Spider-Man and Green Goblin. All while this is happening, Harry is screaming to try and get his suit to reboot so he can help Peter, and you assume that's what would happen, he'll come in right at the end and rescue Peter at the last minute. But it doesn't actually happen, and Peter ends up holding his own against the villain, utilizing the webbing that Otto developed to take down Black Cat without killing him. Black Cat thinks that Spider-Man is going to kill him though for some reason, but Peter leaves him to tend to Harry, whose suit comes back online, and almost just in time as Black Cat manages to free himself and tries to kill Peter, but the Goblin blasts him off the rooftop with his laser, effectively crippling the villain when he hits the ground. Now I know this is Black Cat and I wasn't really expecting some sort of knockdown, drag him out fight with the heroes, but he was beaten so damn quickly, and maybe that's the point. He was sent out to test the waters. For the rest of the Sinister Six, he is the weakest of them, but compared to the other battles we've seen in the series, the Kingpin battle and even the Shocker fight early on, this was definitely the weakest battle in just terms of what would happen. It still looked fantastic. Marco Cicchetto's artwork for the battle was brilliant, but it was really just a nothing fight, and Peter and Harry didn't really get a chance to work together all that much. Luckily, Black Cat doesn't die from his injuries, and Peter sees to it that he's taken to hospital before confronting Harry for what he did. Again, we get more Harry's reasoning on why he wants to kill, citing that the villain would have just done the same to him, and Peter needs to wake up to the reality of the world they are in before it is too late. Peter, however, believes that they need to be better than the villains and not fight on their level, but Harry isn't convinced, even going so far to say that if push comes to shove, he will always kill and won't hesitate. I do love how Peter, in classic Spider-Man fashion, does break the tension here, telling Harry he's still invited to Christmas despite almost killing this villain, with the two joking about Harry is getting the kids some spandex so they can join them, and obviously that's not going to happen. That's never going to happen. Peter would never actually allow that, but I think that maybe Spider-Man should have done things a little bit differently here. I think maybe he should have sort of gotten a little bit more serious about Harry and his crusade, being that he's shown time and time again that he will go over that line to beat these villains, and it's something that Peter has made clear he does not want to do, but Harry keeps doing it. And I know Peter wants to give him the benefit of the doubt, it's his friend, they're bonding over the fact that they've got these powers to help free the world, but the turning point is going to happen really soon, and it's probably going to happen at a really bad time for the heroes, and maybe Goblin is going to betray Peter when he needs him the most. Ultimate Spider-Man issue 9 was another banger issue. It pushed Hickman's various storylines in some great directions, none more so than Harry and Peter's working relationship, and how Harry continues to push the limits on on what being a hero means. I'm loving the build up with what I assume is the ultimate symbiote as well, and how it's being positioned to turn on Peter down the line. However, the weakest part of this issue was probably the Black Cat fight. It didn't live up to the other battles we've seen with the other villains in past issues, and just kind of felt like a nothing fight, like nothing was really achieved with this fight. The heroes didn't really learn anything they didn't already know, and it didn't push the Sinister Six story in a meaningful direction. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.